Hey there, fellow axe junkies, Rooster here. Say, I wanted to let you guys know that today I got invited by Whiskey River Trading to come down and do a demonstration and explanation of the scary sharp technique that I use to sharpen axes. Now this is going to be a kind of like a follow-up video. There is an existing video that I made a few years ago, but this one's going to do a little bit more in-depth in the tools that I use and a little more tricks to get a really nice edge on an axe. So I want to show kind of a couple things where some of the tools that I'm going to be using today, and how I found to be a good way to stabilize the axe while I'm sharpening it in the shop. I've got my post vise that I brought in that's mobile that I take to my axe meets and such, and so we're using that today. And then we have a boy's axe that I found at a flea market. It's a 2 1/4 pound. I think it's a Collins made by Man. And it's got an edge on it that's, I don't know, it needs some work. It's not very sharp, so we're going to be, taking it from dull to a working sharp, and then from there we're going to take it to scary sharp, we'll call it. Some of the tools that I'm going to be using are, like with the vise, I use a pad. This is actually made out of baler belting. Baler belting is what they use to make for hay balers, for straw and wheat, or straw and hay. And you can get it in different widths, and you can buy it by the foot at some of the farm stores and such. The nice thing about it is that it flexes. You can put it into your vise, and then as you close the vise and open the vise, it flexes so that it doesn't fall out. So we're using that today. Nice thing about it too is that it grips, and it's not very marring. Oftentimes you will get a little bit of black on your handle, but that easily sands off. The advantage is that you're not going to be damaging the handle with the inside of your jaws, whether they're smooth. Guys do have rubber ones. I just find that this way the jaws don't fall off and I don't have to chase them around the floor. Sometimes if you've just got a head you want to sharpen, what I'll often do is keep old handles and use them just to put in your vise, and then you can slide a head on and off as you need to. So it's almost like a clamp for sharpening. And then once you have it sharpened, then you can go ahead and use your finished handle to hang it with. I like to sharpen before I hang, mainly because of the fact that I'm not putting my nice new handle in and out of a vise all the time. Because the more time I handle it, the dirtier it's going to get, and oftentimes the axes that I produce are for customers and such. I mean, for myself, my own axe, I don't care about that. So this is a nice trick where you can use an old handle and just use it as a clamp or a bracket in your vise. And you don't, basically it's sacrificial. You can chew it up all you want. And for this, I won't even need the baler belting. I would just stick that right in there because this is sacrificial. So with the sharpening technique that I use is called scary sharp. It's actually a combination of two existing systems. So I didn't invent this. I just took two systems and combined them. The first system is what we call scary sharp for chisels. That was developed by a man, and I forget his name, but I know my buddy Brad Baber. He got me onto it because we sharpen our timber framing chisels that way, where you use a piece of plate glass and put different grits of sandpaper on that plate glass, and then you use that with your chisels to get a nice edge, and then you work your way up in grits. And the other system is called mouse pad sharpening for knives. So the guys that are into knives, as they're sitting at their computer monitor watching axe junkie videos, they're take a mouse pad on the edge of their desk, and they'll use their knife and they'll put the sandpaper on top of that mouse pad, and that pad conforms to the convex shape of the blade as they draw it across that sandpaper. So what I did is I took those two systems, and what I use is a drywall pad. So instead of taking the tool to the sandpaper in scary sharp, or even in mouse pad sharpening, I'm taking the sandpaper to the tool. So the tool is stationary, and I'm taking the block of the sanding pad to the tool. And that pad then conforms the sandpaper to the edges that are already established, either by the tool itself, or if you use a file to set the bevels. So we're going to be using this. I have a number of different pads here, and each one is set up a little bit differently. They're all pretty much the same width, and you can basically take a regular 9x11 piece of sandpaper from metal, preferably, and slit it into 3 pieces, so each sheet of paper yields 3 pieces of sanding. And then we'll find out later in the video here, as I'm working it, one side of my blade uses 1/2 of the sheet, and as I flip it over, I'll use the other side for the other half. So 1/3 of a sheet of sandpaper does 1 step in the series. So we're basically going to be working our way from a file to start with, and then we're going to jump up to 320 grit paper, and then from there we're going to go for 400, 600, 1500, and then we'll strop it. We'll probably stop at around 600 to show off what I call a utility edge, something that doesn't have to be scary sharp, but just really nice sharp to be safe for limbing and bucking and stuff like that, so you don't have any glancing blows. And let's see, I got some no cry gloves with me that I'm going to be wearing. I think they're Kevlar based, so they're cut resistant. They're not going to stop like puncture or chop, but they will allow me to work safely and not accidentally bump up against my sharp edge as I'm working on it. And then, let's see, I brought this little sandpaper cutter. This is actually kind of cool trick where you slide the paper in and then you can rip it. Makes dividing the paper into 3 pieces a lot easier and faster. So that's a nice thing you can get at a paint store, wherever they sell sandpaper. And then my strop that I made, this is actually my original one. I'm hoping to make another one. A piece of 8-ounce leather with a piece of denim that's epoxy to it. And so now I've got tabs that'll fit into the brackets or the clips on the drywall pad. So now I can use the green compound on there and actually strop that edge when I'm done with the sanding. Okay, let's see. Well, we got a number of files here. I like a file that's called a plastic cut, and it's almost like a double cut, but instead of it's primarily one tooth designed one way, and it's just slit every 3/16 or 1/4 inch. And those little slits in there, that double cut, actually help to take some of the filings out so they don't get jammed into the teeth. So I don't have to spend as much time with a file card or have to put chalk on as much, because those, that cross cut is almost like an exit port for the filings, if that makes sense. And I don't know if we can show that up close, but eventually when I get the axe in there, I'll show you what it looks like. All right, well, let's see if we can take this edge and get it started. Take my baler belting, stick that in there. And on this axe, you can see how the neck goes up to the shoulder here. So I'm going to want to kind of pick an area that is relatively the same thickness for the size of my jaw, so that it grabs on really nice. I'm going to be working with the blade towards me a little bit. Get that in there. There we go. And I'm going to get my gloves on. Now with these no-cry gloves, when I first put them on, I thought that they were too small because my fingers wouldn't fit in them. Well, it's because it's a knit, and as long as I work them in there, that knitting expands to the size of my hand. So these are technically, these are like a medium, and they're almost perfect. I wear a size 9 in gloves, but like you see, there, it looks like I got fingertips. But once I get that worked in there, they're probably one of the nicest pair of gloves that I've had. The nice thing about it is they also breathe on the backside, so if we're working in humidity or heat and anything. It allows my hands to breathe so I'm not sweating to death or causing any of that. I'm going to start with a draw filing technique to set the bevel on this axe. Because right now, you can get a close-up of this, it is, right now it is pretty ugly. It is probably just right from the factory, but it was never really meant to be a sharp axe. It's probably a hardware store axe, and it's hard to get, it's hard for the manufacturer to create an axe that's sharp and allow it to be on the floor in a hardware store, because you got everyone and brother picking it up. And if it was really sharp, it'd be a liability for them. So what they do is they get pretty close. It's the responsibility of the axe owner to then take it to the sharpness that they want. So a lot of times guys will use a golf ball and they'll set a nut in it to go on the end of their file. What I got going on is actually it's a T-nut that fits into a wooden ball. And I like this better because that T-nut won't rotate as I tighten on it, whereas a pressed regular nut in a golf ball sometimes will sometimes will slip, even if you do epoxy it. I've tried that a couple times, but right now this seems to be the best for me. And I've got different size nuts that will handle different sizes of files that I've got. So what happens is that ball is actually going to rotate or spin a little bit, and it's going to help me set the angle of my file. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to work from the back side of my file back side of my bevel towards the edge. So just to get an idea of where I'm at, I'll start dragging it, and every time I drag it, I pick it up and then put it back down and drag it. To get an idea of what this is doing, you can only go this direction with this file. It's actually a push file. If I was push filing, I'd be going like this. But since I'm draw filing, I need to pull it. If you guys want to see from the underside, if I was doing from the back side, if I was underneath and I was pulling this across, you can see how the teeth start to cut because they're just in that angle. But if I went this way, I'd be going backwards from those teeth and they wouldn't be working at all. So it only works in this direction to cut. And it's almost a shearing effect. And it's a really acute angle, acute angle on that. So from coming to the top side now, so I need to pull, and as you can see, I'm starting to, actually it's kind of magnetized. You can already see the shavings are actually starting to stick to the axe end. Now, I am starting to get, so I'm going to tap a little bit to see if I can drop them out, and like I said, with that double cut, it seems to let those filings go a lot sooner. So I'm basically just holding on to that ball, just kind of keeping it, and that's basically giving me a relatively accurate plane to start with. And then as I work that ball closer to the bit, as you can see, the angle of that file changes. So every once in a while, I'll be draw filing, and I'll move it up a little bit and move it so that I'm actually getting more of a convex shape to my bevel. I'm going to start moving the handle on the tang closer to the bevel, to the edge, leading edge. Now that's one side, and you can tell how the forging and the pre-grinding wasn't very accurate, because you can see how I've got a little warble line here on my leading edge of my, or the back side of my bevel. So now we're going to flip it over and work the other side. Up right. Now we're going back to the back of the pole a little bit so I can start my now this bit is probably hardened, probably quenched back about 1.25 inches, whatever, which means that steel is harder than the steel back here. And if I don't clear off, make sure I don't have any shavings in there, I'm actually going to start taking those filings and pushing them into that bevel, and they're actually going to start like scratching itself. And then you'll see scratch lines that are hard to take out because they're almost like gouges. It's like getting a rock into your shoe. As you walk across the floor, you're going to feel or see those marks. And so that's why one of those things you want to pay attention to is that you're not gouging your bevel as you're creating it. So this side is actually going a little smoother than the last side, which makes sense. Start moving my way up to towards the bed again. Trying to create a convex grind, which then the drywall pad will follow with the sandpaper. Got an angle gauge here. And we're sitting at around probably just under 25 degrees total. We'll move it this way and see the number. So that's pretty close. That's pretty good for a utility edge. So now that we got the bevel pretty much set, I'm considering this to be more like a working axe because it was kind of in rough shape to begin with. And so now we're actually going to move to the sandpaper, the scary sharp part of what we're going to be doing today. So with the scary sharp, now I'm going to turn my bit away from me. Still working on the same side of the vise. one end of the paper and clamp there. Try and kind of keep it straight, and then fold it around. And tuck it on the other side. So now I've got that pad will allow me to conform to the shape now I've just created with my file. Now you could use this axe just like the way it is with file. I'm sure it would cut, but to have a longer lasting edge, I like to take it a little bit sharper, and kind of like the theory is that the sharper you start with, the longer it takes to get dull. At a certain point, I mean, you get to the point where you get so sharp that you're not seeing any difference. Like I don't really see much difference between like 1500 and a strop outside of just it being really shiny. But I know that strop does take that micro edge and cleans it up a little bit. So we'll start with this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in circular motions a little bit, but I'm actually picking it up. So I'm actually putting it down and then rotating it out. And the idea is if I lock my wrist a little bit with the angle and only kind of go from my elbow, then I don't have to worry about the angle changing much. And so what I'll do is I'll support it so it doesn't vibrate much. And what I'm doing is I'm watching to see I'm basically exchanging I'm replacing old scratches with new scratches. So I'm replacing the scratches that the file gave, and I'm going to be using the sandpaper and replace those. And so since I'm starting with 320, I'm going to work my way kind of in stages across, back and forth, as opposed to just doing the whole bit to begin with. So every time I come back, I'm kicking it up slightly with my elbow. Watching the scratches that I'm creating. And I can actually see some of the gouges that the hardened steel put back into its bevel in the file. Just my paper a little bit. And a lot of this is just trial and error as you start to learn how to do this. I can see right now I've actually got a burr that's so long it's almost like a flat. It's almost like a wide wire. And then once I get to the point where I'm satisfied about replacing the scratches, now I'll go ahead and flip it around. Now, if you can see, I'm going to take the other side that I did not use for the other side of the head. Oops. Try this. I'll work my way from left to right, back and forth. Trying to help set that bevel. I'm already starting to take some of that wire off. I like to use the reflection of the light off the bevel to show me where I have and have not been. I mean, you could use a marker on there, but the marker comes off so fast because the pad is covering so much of the surface at the same time that, I mean, if I put a marker on there, kind of paint it with a marker, it would come off so fast that I couldn't really use that. So I'm using the reflection of the light to see my scratches. Help move the angle and parts that I haven't touched yet. All right. All right, now that we got the 320 done, most of the heavy lifting is done already. The file did most of the work for setting the bevel. This now is kind of just, cleaning up that geometry of that bevel at 320 grit. But once now we jump up to like 400, now we're actually more focused on the edge, the leading edge, than we are the overall bevel. Now, the overall bevel will see some action. It will get shinier as we work up in grits. But it's not about the shiny bevel, it's about the leading edge that we're creating with that convex, or with the pad going over that convex edge and making sure that leading edge is always getting a new burr, new scratches, and we're getting smaller and smaller as scratches as we move forward. So now we're up to 400. I'm going to switch my axe back to my starting point. I always go back and forth. I mean, I could use the 400 right after I did the 320 on that side, but if there is a wire or a burr, I want to keep going back and forth so I can break it off. So now we're back to the right side. We're at 400. And there's going to be a significant change in the brightness of the bevel, and the scratches are going to be a lot smaller. And I usually once I jump to 400, I'm going with wider strokes because I want to get that leading edge to be continuous all the way across. Now I don't have to use as many strokes now with the 400 because we've already done, like I said, most of the work with the 320. There's a sweet spot on this vise where the handle won't roll as much. Now I'm using the side that I haven't used before. So I'm getting two sides off each piece of paper. Spring on this one's kind of sloppy. It's kind of old and tired, but it's my favorite one, so there. So now we're going to jump up to 600. And having them already pre-cut ahead of time kind of makes the process a little bit run smoother. I've actually got a box where I've got them indexed, already pre-cut. Spend a couple minutes with my paper cutter and run through a couple packages of sandpaper, and now I have one less thing to do when I'm trying to sharpen, whereas if I was trying to create pieces and sharpen at the same time. Now, I also want to add that this is a nice technique. It's got a really shallow learning curve. It doesn't take very much to pick it up. It's hard to screw up. You're not going to ruin any temper of the bit with this, and I kind of like manual labor that way because you get a sense of pride with it. There's other ways to sharpen. This is kind of the one that kind of gives me a really good finish without getting into power tools and stuff like that. So now we're up to 600. We're going to flip back again. I'm still watching my scratches here. Like I said, the lower ones do most of the work for setting the bevel, and now we're just concerned about the leading edge. Alright, now there is a slight burr on this, very slight, but at about 600, I consider this to be what I call a utility edge. So this is a working axe, gets a utility edge. It's not for a customer, it's for me. It's not a carver, it's not a bushcraft axe. It's a limbing truck axe, get it dirty and not be afraid of the edge. Because I really have a lot of time to do it, or as much time as there was if I was going to take it further. But just for fun, we're going to take it couple more steps. So after 600, you could go to 1,000, but I'm just going to jump to 1,500 and see where she ends up. Now if I was working on a head that was loose and I was using my sacrificial, I guess we'll call it a bracket handle, I would just be taking the head off and flipping it over from side to side and then working the same way. I wouldn't have to go back and forth, which kind of makes it easy that way. But it all depends on if you're working with a head that's already hung or one that is loose and you're trying to sharpen and then hang later. In these last couple steps, it doesn't take much. Alright, I'm just more worried about that leading edge. I can still see where I've got some scarring from my file. You're never going to see it when you're swinging. So last step I'm going to actually use a leather strap on it now, the one that I showed earlier. Piece of leather with denim, which kind of gives me tabs now. So I'll let that hold on to the clamp. And I still got enough green compound on here to do what I want. So, almost the same, but instead of going more circle, I'm actually gonna go diagonally, so that I can get more weight on it. So I'm actually stropping it as opposed to just kind of just playing with it a little bit. You can almost hear it snapping. hard. So this is the final step now. So that's 320, 400, 600, and I skipped 1,000, went to 1,500, and then to the green compound, which was his microfine, jeweler's rouge, you'll call it. And we'll try and do the hair test. What do you think? Let's see if I can find the light here. For organized, I'd say that's pretty sharp. Now, you don't have to go that sharp, but I guess I want to take it all the way to that point so that you know all the steps. It's called Scary Sharp Axe Sharpening, although a number of guys that I know have coined it Rooster Scary Sharp, but and I appreciate that them using my name with that, but I have to give credit, like I said, to the two guys the guys that came before me, and I just want to kind of pass it on and let you guys try it out for yourselves. Thanks a lot, and have a good day.